Yeah.
Okay, you won't even know I'm here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving to the Q&A section of the evening, but we're not in the National Film Theatre, so I think we can keep it all quite informal. So I won't be, I don't think I'm going to be chairing as such, and I hope everyone will take part. Now you're looking at me really seriously. But, yeah, well look, I'll start with some questions. So, how did the two of you meet? Do you want to say for the benefit of the audience?
Sounds like a dating show.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Isn't it? How did the two of you meet?
Well, there was this crowded room and our eyes met.
Yeah.
It was through you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you told Leo to look at Queer Heroes.
Yeah.
I had orchestrated Queer Heroes.
Yeah.
And then you orchestrated meeting me at Queerly Beloved.
Yeah, so I was at the time thinking about making a animation about the history of British animation told through a series of different British animators.
Mm-hmm.
Never happened, maybe it will. But anyway, you told me to look at Kate's film that you just, it was just going to festivals.
It was a year ago, it was a year before, yeah.
And that was really interesting. At the same time, Ali, who did the Not Every Princess film, was setting up this new queer animation night, so I suggested she get you along, and I went along too, and we met.
Was that the time
that you were there?
Or was it at one of these?
You were at the event at Queerly Beloved?
No, I went to that.
At the Glory, yeah.
No, that was a really good evening. I mentioned this early on, that I find it surprising there isn't more queer animation or animation about LGBT issues. It just seemed very, very surprising. And as far as I can tell, there haven't been many programmes like the one you put together anywhere, really. Why do you think that is?
Well, queer film is predominantly live-action drama. I mean, if you go to Flare Film Festival, they don't. The only time they've ever had an animation programme was the one that I was in with Little Elephant 3 years ago, where I saw Cut, the film that's from Israel. Don't know. I just feel like sometimes animation's the underdog in terms of film festivals. I don't know if you all feel the same way. So I feel like it's almost this sort of intersection of lots of different things meeting. So in terms of queer film, animation often doesn't fit in, but then in terms of animation festivals, queer animation often doesn't fit in. So I found it a little bit heartbreaking when I started to make Little Elephant and Chariot Riders, that the festivals I used to be in Eastern Europe then started rejecting me. So I had a festival in Slovakia that I always used to be in email me and say, oh, so can we see Little Elephant? And I'd already submitted it and they rejected it, and then they requested it the year later, and I was like, you do know that this is an LGBT film? And then they rejected it again. So I just think that, and so Little Elephant was in like 100 film festivals, as you know, so I find it a little bit sort of heartbreaking that lots of, like Poland, and like lots of places that are really good for animation aren't really taking on board queer animation.
Do you think that's a kind of an attitude thing in Eastern Europe?
Yeah.
I find this shocking.
Yeah. In terms of queer animation, I think North America, so Canada and like New York, both coasts of America, to be honest, not the middle parts. West Coast America, East Coast America, Canada, Germany, UK.
Right.
Maybe like Northern Europe are the best places for queerness.
But even there, it's still few and far between.
Yeah, in terms of queer animation as a genre, no, there's not a lot. In fact, I get emailed quite a lot for people asking me to recommend queer animation. And
it's, I do find it, like you, Martin, find it surprising, because if you look at other art forms or film in general, there is a lot of kind of identity exploration. You look at the fine art world and the way the big institutions support those kind of stories.
Yeah.
You see it much more prevalently than you do in animation, and I don't really know why.
I think things are changing. I think our generation, we grew up with Section 28. I think the younger generation haven't grown up with that. So actually, I've seen a couple of my students, so I teach part-time at University of Hertfordshire, I've seen a couple of students coming through making quite a lot of trans films. So I think it's changing for young people. And actually, the films that I showed tonight, I think I said like 3 of them were grad films. So Cut from Israel was a grad film, Open Recess was a grad film from New York, and Ali's film was a uni film. So
just going back to something you just said, I find it really shocking at a time when there are so many gay dramas, for want of a better expression. There are gay characters in mainstream, BBC One Sunday night dramas and so on. There's a great deal of gay or queer cinema. And at the same time, animation, which I always think of as being really at the vanguard, depending on the kind of animation, but festivals, a lot of them are very forward-looking in terms of art form, rising genres, but also in the sense of community. And that's one of the things that really made a big impression on me when I started going to film festivals, was the sense of community. Now, to hear what you just said, that it's probably not conscious homophobia, but it's something quite, well, should we say disappointing to say the least.
It is.
I can't reconcile the two.
It is disappointing, yeah.
But at a time when lots of festivals are showing, queer cinema and so on, why is animation lagging behind, do you think?
I don't know.
I mean, there are plenty of queer identified people doing animation, but not really finding
films about it.
or finding the opportunity to make films about it. Maybe, I don't know, we've talked about this before, about how in the UK the animation industry is very mainstream and geared towards supporting things that can be a commercial success, and it's much harder
we don't have a lot of adult animation
to find opportunities to make films that are more artist or sort of independently led.
I think America is paving the way in terms of adult animation. So if you think about what's on Netflix at the moment, so Tuca and Bertie, BoJack Horseman, Big Mouth. So I obviously work in the adult animation genre, and I think America is paving it much more than UK. I think UK 20 years ago, was the 90s 20 years ago? I'm not sure. So like Craps and Villas. I mean, I think we were paving the way for adult animation in the 90s with things like Craps and Villas, but also we were paving the way also in terms of like sketch comedy and The Fast Show and Smack the Pony, and we don't really have that now. We're quite conservative now 20 years later. So this is what I was talking to my producer about. So she used to produce Ali G and the 11 O'Clock Show in the 90s. So she was saying to me that it would probably have been easier to get Pussy Willow commissioned in the 90s than it probably is now, in regards to we've kind of shifted to be a little bit more right-wing, so that's why we're looking to more American markets at the moment. So in terms of like Comedy Central and like Netflix, and like America is, I know obviously Trump is the president right now, but in terms of adult animation and comedy, like Broad City, it's very kind of like female lens focused. We've obviously had like Fleabag in the UK in terms of like female-led comedy, but yeah, nothing in terms of animation. I mean, we do children's animation very well in the UK, but we haven't done adult animation for, well, actually, it's probably since Chris Shepherd. What was his series called? Didn't he do
Monkey Staring? Monkey Dust.
Monkey Dust. Did Chris Shepherd do that?
I did sort of. Yeah, everyone did loads of.
Yeah,
it wasn't specifically Chris Shepherd.
Okay.
But maybe should we ask other people what they, if anyone else has got any ideas of why?
Yeah.
This is the precedent.
In terms of festivals, I think there are so many animated films being made. Actually, getting into a festival is so difficult. Because I've made a few films recently, and I just wait for the emails to come in to tell me I haven't got into a festival.
Well, you actually get emails.
Do you make queer animation?
No. Just general self-indulgent films that are of my own, basically.
Animation?
Yeah. And I left college in '86, and for 23 years I didn't do any films at all. I was quite happy working on adverts and TV series and stuff. And it wasn't really until 2013 I actually made a short film. It wasn't very good. but I ended up trying to get into loads of festivals and didn't get into it. But yeah, I think you get a feeling that with a lot of festivals, it's a bit of an old boys network. You know, there's a lot of people who know each other, and if you're mates with the festival director, you might get in and things like that. You know, there seems to be a lot of.
I think it's
stuff
like that in
going on.
every industry.
Yeah,
though.
I think, you know, and certain festival directors I've spoken to have said that if someone kind of gets in, they like to get them again, so that the audience can watch them develop or whatever. You know?
Yeah.
So that means that if you get the first thing in, then it kind of rolls on from there. But I think if I made films to get into festivals, I wouldn't bother making films, you know. In fact, actually, when you do get a film into a festival, it's a nice pain in the arse, because then you've got to actually do something. You've got to actually send it or turn it into
make a
cinema
DCP.
pack that you can do. Yeah, that kind of stuff. You go, oh god. So I'm actually quite pleased when I don't get into a festival. That's
I think
work.
the festivals are minefields.
So
They're always
I'll get to the point now
minefields.
where I just make films to annoy people. That's the only reason I do them. You know, so great. You know, that's it. But yeah, I think that's one thing about festivals. I don't think it's specifically anti-gay. It's just it's so difficult to get into anything. Not being part of that kind of network to start with. You know.
I was kind of thinking that there's this weird kind of feeling that as a queer person you want to just be respected straight up, and you don't want people to see your films just be a queer film and a genre on its own. And I think like now there's like, I know that there was like at AUB like people pitch stuff, and there was like the queer film, and it didn't get voted through, and it feels like people just think it's like you're using it as a gimmick or something, and it feels like people are starting to think like, oh, you're just trying to get attention by making this queer film. So I feel like a lot of like, I know that other like queer people, like and myself, like we kind of like suppress that, and we're like, I'm just making a film, can you just respect my film? And you kind of start hiding all of this like identity underneath just trying to make a good film and trying to just at least kind of get into the industry and get a job or get your work made. And it's like you're worried that if you make it about being queer, that people are gonna. It's like
I think there's also
backwards. If that makes sense.
that's a really interesting point, because there's been a huge shift, I think, in terms of what classifies something as gay, queer, LGBTQIA plus, whatever. I mean, the terminologies shift as much as that. And it's gone very much. I think that from being quite a sort of exclusive world of I am a gay man making a film about two men who probably have some sort of sexual narrative going on, through to being something much broader and intersectional about identity. At least that's kind of where I would hope that it's going, and that particularly, you know, with just using the word queer, I mean, I certainly use it because I don't want to restrict. I don't think LGBT is particularly helpful terminology, because what is my experience compared to a trans black woman, or you know, it's a very different identity.
I think that's why I really like the series Broad City, because one of the characters is bisexual, but he doesn't make a point about the fact that she's bisexual. She just goes out with whoever, and it's just more about them like being really awesome and kicking ass, and it's about their kind of adventures, and she just like goes out with whoever she wants to go out with, and I think that's quite refreshing. But I don't know, I feel like I just like to see my life reflected on screen, and I don't feel like I see it on mainstream media, which is why I feel like I want to make queer content. So, oh, you told me off for saying the word content on Saturday, so I'm not going to say content, I'm going to say material. I'm going to use the word content. Yeah, because I just find it really boring, just always seeing straight people and their lives and their stories. So that's why I think it's quite nice to make animations about having a queer within a lesbian bar or whatever.
But also to make characters, what's so great about Pussy Willow is it's not all about lesbians, it's about people who have multifaceted identities, part of which might be being a lesbian. Like I'm thinking of The Mansplainer, for example. or Smile,
Yeah.
you really draw out the fact that these are rounded individuals who other people may choose to define by one aspect of their character, but actually there's so much more.
Yeah, no, I think Pussy Willow is female lens in general. It's
Yeah.
broadly the female lens. It's not just queer. I have queer characters. That was obviously a queer episode. Obviously, that's a queer episode, but they're not all queer episodes. So.
I like the vegan house share one.
Yeah, vegetarian house share. Yeah, that's about vegetarians. Yeah.
I would also argue that we haven't really cultivated much of a short film culture in this country for the last 10 years as well. Like, a grad film is the one chance you get to make a film. And yeah, you want it to be a statement about... that statement about holding back because you wanted to sort of not put any barriers up in your career is crazy. It makes loads of sense.
Yeah.
Because we've been told, you know, like with Section 28 when I was at school, you sort of encouraged that the stories don't mean anything, or aren't valid, or no one wants to hear them, and we should be quiet about them. And that damage maybe takes a while to get over sometimes as well, because there's hardly any animated shorts we made at all. The proportion is tiny that actually maybe are bold enough, and maybe you get that confidence the more films you make, but how many people get to make a film post-graduation?
Me?
You do, because you
I
know
don't know.
absolutely, but you're being really bold and crowdfunding, and I think that's fantastic, and persevering, but I think, I don't think enough people are doing that actually. So
I think what
it's
you
all
need
about-
to do is find a way of making something quickly and cheaply. That's I've started
Yeah.
puppet animation, having never done any before. So the last two films I've done are puppet animated films, and I can knock out a 3-minute film inside a month, and that's just 3 hours a day.
I think.
So I get up really early in the morning, do 3 hours work, then go into work, and then that's it. So that quick intensiveness I think is quite nice. I mean they look very rough around the edges, but I don't care.
With Pussy Willow, I did about an episode a week, and that's all puppet animation. So that's why it looks so shit, to be honest. Until Leo started to work on it. So all of series 1, like Parents Chat, I cut that in about a week. So and it's all puppet animation because I do it all on no budget.
I'd say no one's going to give you money to do short films because in the end, to anyone that's got any kind of commercial ideas, they're completely useless, aren't they? You can't sell them, you can't fit them into television schedules, you won't make any money out of it.
That's in this country, however. Say if you go to Germany, when I was in Berlinale, a lot of the people there were given about 30,000 euros to make a 3-minute film. And that's how it used to be here in the 90s,
But
isn't it?
that's kind of there's
Sweden
no
and-
way that if you make a film, you can actually sell it somewhere and get any money for it.
You can get a distribution deal, or try and get a distribution deal.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, why should animation be different to painting or sculpture, or if that's kind of that sort of conceptual approach and the art approach is leading you, then you shouldn't need to get a distribution deal, or
No, I think you just make it for the sake of making
Yeah.
it. And that's what I do. I never bother looking for any money at all. The amount of
Okay.
effort and time you spend looking for money, you may as well sit there making a film.
very true.
To be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Leah, just to take you up on a point there, I mean, if you paint, then you have an asset which you can sell. If you make an animation, it's like,
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Very good, thank you.
You can sell it, you can exhibit it and sell it. You can't really sell an animation in the same way to an individual.
No, but
So you need
nor can you really make a living from selling paintings.
Some people do.
Yeah.
I think with the digital series model, which is what Pussy Willow is following, the model is you do it all on no budget, put it all on the internet, try and get some attention, either fans or followers, or try and win some awards, get some validity, and then it gets picked up by a producer, which is what happened to me. So I made Pussy Willow, as you know, for like 2 years on no budget. Got into Berlinale Talents, and then my producer, who used to produce Sacha Baron Cohen, she saw it, and now she's producing it. So that's kind of the structure of that. That's the model of the digital series. So no, I mean I never made it thinking I'm going to make money, but you kind of do it as like a calling card to say this is what I can do. Then hopefully it might get get commissioned by a broadcaster.
Yeah.
Or you go the other way and follow sort of like anime projects who do much more publicly funded
Yeah, but
series
it's
and
fuck
things.
all though, to be honest. It's
No,
like,
yeah.
what, $1,000 for like film? Animate? Sorry.
No,
carry on.
no, they get considerable support from Arts Council and Joel and
Okay.
places like that
Yeah.
to do structured, produced projects, whether development or actually producing films.
Yeah, but Animate offer like $1,000 a film.
It depends what program they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. and
What
how it's
about
funded.
random acts? Is there any?
That's $3,000 a film.
Could they? But in terms of a platform for showing it on terrestrial television, is there any opportunities there?
Yeah, you can play for random acts, but they give you $3,000 per film, which is fuck all.
I think at uni you're sort of taught to be a perfectionist because you're so many the industry is obviously very focused on. I think it's focused on being quite vocational. Like, and you don't. I think we're breeding a lot of experts in one field at the moment because even your films are like made in a group of 4 people or something like that. Whether we're still cultivating individual voices enough in short filmmaking, because of course it's much more vocational. You train to be a character animator or a background artist. I think that's probably a problem. And then of course I think because you're taught to be a perfectionist because the standard's so high at all the festivals, you taught yourself out of it quite a lot. That rough and ready approach, making a film a week, getting a style that you can tell a story with is amazing because you're getting your story out there, and I think it's a scary thing to start a film by yourself, and I think if you can find a style that, I think the films you showed this evening were fantastic in the form that they were quite rough around the edges in a lot of cases, but they told really emotionally affecting stories, especially in queer storytelling. What was the American film called again at the school, the high school?
Oh, Open Recess.
Open Recess.
Yeah.
And what's amazing about that film is that like a story, queer stories can be especially devastating. Like there was a relationship there that was just blossoming, and then your parents dissuaded you, and the whole thing got shut down, and then you got this sort of longing of what never was. It's so human. A lot of times queer stories, and they can be so emotionally affecting. And of course, animation is a medium that you can be very metaphorical in as well. So something as devastating as a relationship breaking up can make an amazing short film. And so there's so many stories to tell via animation in queer filmmaking. And it wasn't the most polished film ever. There were lots of nice, really cool held shots, and
it was a great film.
but it got the story out there, and that's I learned a lot. It reminded me how primitive sometimes a story can be, and be how emotionally affecting. Guy 101 was very primitive, but has made people cry in cinemas for sure. I know it was a sort of final year film, very well crafted, but the technology, the visual behind it, didn't have to be groundbreakingly full character animation. I think maybe just taught to be too polished at school at the moment. And you also get a chance to make one grad film at a lot of unis. I know that maybe in America, Cal-Ops, they sort of make films in the first year a lot more, and then films in the second year and build up to a third year film. There's more chances to tell your story. If you had 3 slots to make a film, A, you'd be more rough and ready about it, and B, one of them might reveal your identity a bit more, rather than, this is my portfolio piece. And I think that's where education is focused on at the moment. It makes a big difference.
I was going to say, based on what we've been talking about, is there a case for having actually a queer strand in a festival, or have that as a programme, or would that seem tokenistic?
I've said that to Philip Wilson about London Short Film Festival, but his answer was very interesting, that he likes to stagger queer films throughout all the different strands, because he doesn't want it to get too focused. A little bit like what you were saying, actually. Doesn't want to focus too much on the queerness of the filmmakers, which I thought was quite interesting, actually. So there'd be a programme about love, and there might be like same-sex love and hetero love. So there might be one about family, so Parents' Chat might be in family. So I thought that was actually quite an interesting answer.
In terms of from some of the festivals you've been talking about in other countries, how might
I think
one
maybe
address
animation
that?
festivals might want to address it a bit more. Yeah. But just going back to funding in the UK, just to kind of go back to what you were saying as well about the kind of rawness of like queer storytelling, I sometimes wonder if not having anybody to answer to makes you have more of an authentic voice. So in respect of, if you did have to apply to like Canadian National Film Board, etc., would your proposal get watered down in the end? So it's kind of what I'm going through with Pussy Willow at the moment. So I don't know if I should say all this on camera, but anyway. So we had a no from Comedy Central because they said that it was too queer and too niche. So in my comeback, I've restructured I've now restructured Pussy Willow to be a 20-minute script. So it's still sketch comedy, but it's 20 minutes. But I only have one queer sketch, and the rest is just about the absurdity of modern life. Because the feedback was that I have too niche an audience. So then I told my fans this, and they were devastated, and they were like, I can't believe that you're not continuing with like the queerness of the series. But I was just like, sometimes you just got to compromise, and to a certain extent, your voice is going to get watered down if a commissioner is involved, and I've accepted that as my path now, because I think it is unsustainable only being true to your own voice, and I think if somebody's giving you money, you've got to compromise. So
I pick you up on that a bit because I think actually your non-queer Pussy Willow sketches are still true to your voice.
Okay.
Because they pick up on another part of your identity, and they're still reflecting experiences that you have in the world.
Okay.
And I think that there's something to be said for just having people out there who are publicly identified queer filmmakers making films, whatever those films are, whatever the subject matter of the films are, because they will inherently be made through a queer lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's something that queer film festivals I found quite confusing. So the film I made, The Foundling, which I think of as a queer film, it started as a queer film.
Yeah.
It has no reference to queer content through it.
Material, Martin, not content.
But it comes from a very authentically queer starting point. So I know it's a queer film, but if you don't know me and you don't know the context of it, you may not read that automatically.
Yeah.
But it hasn't got into any queer film festivals.
Okay. It's a film about his son, just to say.
Yeah.
So it's about like queer parenting.
Well, it's about a kid who happens to have two queer parents and how he views the world.
Yeah.
And the fact that having queer parents is not, it's so much more broadly about identity and fitting in rather than specifically about the impact of queerness on his life.
Change the subject a little bit.
Yeah.
I have to ask, what is an orgasm unicorn?
So an orgasm unicorn.
First thing I animated on Pussy Willow.
Yeah, it is. It's first thing that they animated. Animated. So there is an episode called Coming Into the Station, which you can see on the YouTube channel, but not for very long because it's all about to be taken offline when we do our new pitch. So watch it now while you can. There is a character called Orgasm Unicorn, which advertised this event. So Orgasm Unicorn appears at any climatic moments in Pussy Willow. So obviously, in Coming Into the Station, it's about a woman having Skype sex on a train, and she can't climax, and all the passengers help her by giving her advice. You remember this? I think I showed it in London Animation Club like 2 years ago when I first made it. Anyway, so when she manages to achieve this goal, we realise that she's achieved her goal by the emergence of Orgasm Unicorn, who appears outside. He emerges from a rainbow. He then also emerges in Queerer Than Now, and he kind of like makes. Sorry, they're gender neutral. They make quite a few guest appearances throughout Pussy Willow. So basically, it's climatic moments. So actually, in season 3, one of the sketches that I've written is about Orgasm Unicorn going back to the other unicorns, and they don't believe that humans exist, and Orgasm Unicorn keeps going back and saying, "Oh no, I've seen humans exist on a train, blah blah blah." So
So I remember that sketch, but I didn't remember Orgasm Unicorn. And then you did that beautiful graphic for tonight, and you titled for Orgasm Unicorn, and I thought, got to ask about
Oh
this.
yeah, it's one of the characters. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yep. So there you go.
Any more questions about orgasm unicorns? They exist.
Any more questions at all?
So going back to what you were saying about, it's just bizarre, isn't it? The irony that with animation you can go anywhere, you can do anything, but also it can be so personal, and one person can create this whole story in their bedroom or whatever, and just the fact that someone can do that makes it just even more strange that there's not more, But also that people can watch animation and they can watch robots fall in love, or they can watch dogs fall in love, and they relate, and yet
Weetabixes.
yeah. So there's so much potential there with animation, and it's bizarre that there isn't more being done.
I think we're still quite, it's only in the last 15 years or so where people have felt really comfortable coming out sort of in their teenage years of school. It's been encouraged by the schools allowed to talk about it. The younger people come out, the more confident they get when they get to uni to tell stories about them, because they're more comfortable with themselves. I was coming out in my second and third year at uni, and then that time had passed, and I was still working out for myself. The more confident people become in generations, the more likely they're going to be ready to go, yeah, I can tell my story. And I think society will catch up with that hopefully in the next sort of few years as we cultivate openness and an acceptance of that.
I think you're absolutely right, Jamie. I've noticed such a difference in my students compared to our generation. It's just like no biggie in terms of queerness, and that's nice. That's really nice. But I must say that I think it's since Section 28 got taken away, in 2003 in this country, and Scotland in 2000. So it is literally the last 15 years. So this generation of young people now growing up, they would never have had Section 28. So young people in the room, do you know what this is? Well, there we go. So we have some young people in the room. So Section 28, or Clause 28, it was called either thing. It was set up by Thatcher in 1986, and it meant that you weren't allowed to talk about same-sex relationships within schools. And that happened the whole time that we were growing up until 2003. I was like, I left uni by 2003.
Nice.
So there's a whole generation of us that maybe weren't quite as confident with our queerness when we were young, just because I felt like it almost brought a culture of shame to a certain extent for a lot of people, which I don't really see in young people as much as we did. So thank you, New Labour, for taking away Section 28. We have a hand.
I think the important thing as well to note is that the wording of that horrible, is all about promote.
But promoting, that was it.
Promoting.
Yeah.
So therefore, in actual fact, it was about just talking. So in other words, just offering advice, and yet the way it was written was promoting. So therefore, this idea of if you talk about it, you're encouraging it.
It was acknowledging it. Acknowledging it got you in trouble.
Yeah.
Even now, of course, there's still arguments rearing their head again about should we let kids know that same-sex relationships exist outside of any sexual elements of that relationship. It's just do we teach about families at the age of 6? But that's still a conversation that's rearing up because people, based on religious beliefs, which I can understand where that comes from, but it's about do rhinoceroses exist? It almost comes down to that. When we're in a world where people can get married now and that's legal to be happening, and that's great because you get kids being taken to their parents' friends' gay weddings, and not acknowledging it in schools is bonkers. And I think that's still coming up in conversations. Is it morally right? They ask that question time, and we're nearly there in this country. Arthur on the kids show on 22nd season on CBBC, it's on PBS in America. They just had a gay wedding of their teacher that had been in it since the start. I will say it didn't take, like, the boyfriend, the husband didn't say anything. Like, they kept it quite cautious because it's on PBS in the States, but the representation is starting to creep in. In the Hey Arnold movie, they acknowledged that the gay teacher was a partner when they did a reunion movie last year. So even in Kids TV, they're starting to push those barriers down even more.
Great.
And hopefully they'll get a speaking role soon. Because that was a problem there in these situations. But for PBS, the national broadcaster, at a time when Trump's cutting their funding, to make a statement like that is really, really brave. So we just need
that's what I mean. I do think that America's moving away, like much more than the UK right now. I think they're being far more daring. But maybe it takes having a president like Trump for you to be like, I'm not this, and to go the other way, you know?
Yeah, you're right. There's a political. We're realising what we're in danger of losing by not being vocal at the moment.
Yes.
I think that is it's the first time that's really happened in sort of, this time is that people are caring and paying attention again, and that will lead to uprising in that sense of people being a bit more confident in their voices. So I think it's a positive way forward, and the fact you're leading the way by putting something out there every week is a big inspiration because it shows that you just shouldn't stay. Well, I mean, when you launch it, it's not many people are doing it, and it does take that to go. Okay, I can do that too, and it is inspirational. So well done for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sadly, I think we're going to have to wrap up fairly soon. The pub will go to want their room back. But are there any sort of conclusions of the evening? Because I find this really an illuminating discussion. It's been really interesting to hear what you're saying. But can you where next? Where next? Which way forward?
What, for queer animation as a genre?
And your own work, yeah.
Well, I talked about mine. I'm putting together a 20-minute pitch. Only one of my sketches is queer, to send out to broadcasters. I mean, just going back to what you're saying, actually, Jamie. We've got to think about who the gatekeepers are. They're all 50-year-old cis-het white men. They're who the gatekeepers are. Oh, I'm sorry. But they're the people that make the decisions. So that's why I think people feel like they have to tone it down quite a lot. So I am putting together a 20-minute script treatment to send out to broadcasters and hopefully get the series commissioned, and it won't quite be as queer as the web series is. So if you want queer animation, watch it now before I take it offline.
I'm on the other side, really. I'm going for an independently funded 7-minute short, which is very much pitched as a queer and intersectional, identity-driven piece. And we've just submitted to Arts Council and Joe, and for that, both of whom stress how much they want to see underrepresented audiences in the submissions that they receive. So we've got half the funding, need the other half, and if we get it, we'll start production in September. And that's with Animate Project.
It is interesting how, with your project, they want underrepresented voices actively, and from your experience, it's really quite the opposite, and I find that absolutely inexplicable.
But that's the difference between commercial and publicly funded, and I think the publicly funded thing, we'll see how true it is when you look at the kinds of projects that end up getting funded, but certainly the language of the guidance is shifting, and I think the nuances in how they define things is becoming much more sophisticated and much more respectful of people's individualities rather than a lot of grouping together under banners that don't necessarily go together.
But then again, I applied to the Arts Council for Pussy Willow and I got rejected.
Yeah, it's true.
So, and that's when it was super queer and they were interested. So the conclusion is we can't win. I think that's a conclusion.
Yeah. Except London Animation Club.
London Animation Club, yeah.
Well, I'm delighted to show any work you produce, and I hope you'll let me do that. Sadly, we have to finish there. Thank you very much for coming all the way from Bournemouth. I think you deserve a round of applause. Well, thank you everyone for coming, but thank you so much to Kate and Leo. It's been a fantastic evening, and
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really delighted you put this together, Kate. So
Yeah.
thank you very much indeed. Big round of applause for